co-host of Voices Unlocked, which is the podcast of More Than Our Crimes. And we bring the voices from behind federal walls and the DC jail out to you so you can hear what it's like inside. And my co-host.
I'm Robert Barton, Pam's co-host of Voices Unlocked. And we have a special guest today, and this is like very dear to my heart because when we're talking about bringing voices of incarcerated people out, well, here's a person who is representing a whole prison or a whole jail of people who he's serving as their direct contact with all of their issues and getting them to city government.
Yeah, so what Rob's referring to is DC has a very unique form of micro-democracy, grassroots democracy. I'm not sure if any other city, state in the country has it, but it's called the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions. And they're like neighborhood level, really micro districts that take grassroots, everyday citizens' voices and make sure they get up and have a voice in the DC Council. Mm-hmm. And Harold Cunningham is the current ANC commissioner for the jail because the jail is its own ANC.
Mm-hmm. And that's very, well, it's amazing, one, that you have someone that's incarcerated that can basically like serve as a liaison between his population, which is the DC jail, and our city council. And so with being able to do that, he's able to take all their concerns about their conditions, different legislation that's going on, and any other problems that they are having over the jail, straight to the city council. So he has his own like office, he has his own email. It's just very progressive, and I commend DC for being at the forefront of something like this.
Yeah, and I think when you hear Harold talk, shortly, I want you to remember he's a pretty amazing person, actually, because he not only did he come out of many years in federal prison,
too many,
but he actually spent like 2 decades in the ADX, which is the supermax, the worst federal prison in the country.
In the world.
In the world.
Not in the country, in the world.
And say, why is it?
Because you locked down 23-1 is total isolation. It's the highest level of security. You in the cell. Within the cell, meaning you have a door, and then they have bars, and the officers step into what they call the sally port. That's between the door and the bars to feed you. You never really have no human contact. And it's just a very dehumanizing, isolating place.
And he only got out because he was actually the lead plaintiff in a class action suit that challenged the mental health care in the ADX. He was brought in 2016. They immediately took him off his psychiatric drugs because he has a mental illness. And the only treatment he was really getting was either through telehealth or like self-help workbooks. Yeah.
The self-help workbooks is something that you have to do to progress through the program. And so it wasn't to help him. It really is for them to be putting something on paper to say that he's done this and this is how they measure you to see if you are ready to advance to the next stages.
And this is somebody who'd been diagnosed with a form of schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. So there was a class action lawsuit which they won. I think it was the ACLU, I believe, who helped them. Mm-hmm. And he was transferred out because of that lawsuit. So not only was he finally released, but he won relief and better care for everybody else who was there. And he ended up, that's how he ended up in prison with you.
Yeah, we ended up in Hazleton's special housing unit, which is like a lockdown unit for basic disciplinary. And so we were there. I was in the cell with a guy who was also in ADX with him. And so we kind of like met through him. And we've been fast friends and talking to each other ever since. And I try to stay in contact with him while he's over the jail, being though now he has the ability to use the email and also use the phone.
And why is he in jail now?
Why is he in prison? Or why is he up in jail now?
So
he was transferred back because he's trying to give his time back. So it was for a legal issue, and he's working on his some type of appeal.
Okay. So what you're going to hear now, though, is hearing from Harold himself. He's actually in the jail. Talking to us by Zoom, which of course you could never do from federal prison.
He ain't gonna do that from federal prison or no other prison, unless you're in Massachusetts. Massachusetts will allow you to do that.
No, so Harold will tell you a little bit about his history.
I've been incarcerated just about all my life, but however, this step right here that I've been in, been 34 years straight. I came in 1993, and I haven't been home since. But right before that, I was locked up for 5 years in the Maryland system when I was charged as an adult when I was a juvenile, and I came home and I was out there for 7 months. And then I've been in since then. I came home in March of 1993. I was 22 years old. And then October the 17th, I was shot up real bad by the police in a shootout situation. And at that time, I was someone, like I said, who just come home from being a juvenile, coming home as a daughter, 22, suffering from mental illness and mental disorder. So, you know, it didn't take long before I was back incarcerated due to the actions that I was going on in my head on how I felt towards police. Someone like me who came 10, 20, 30 years ago, whatever, even 10 years ago, I could barely, I was learning how to read, write, and everything. When I came into prison, like I said, I could barely read or write with an IQ of 68. All I knew was violence, and that's how I lived. However, that person then, I wasn't violent just to be violent. As you know, Rob, we came in, it was guerrilla warfare, period. That's just was the laws of the land where we came from, and the strong survived. However, that person then, I wouldn't change too much because everybody go through what they need to go through to become who they are today, right?
So, as we mentioned, Harold is back in the jail, and he's really involved now in civic life, which is sort of amazing after the history you just heard. So I asked Harold, though, I was assuming the answer already, but whether or not he remembers during his childhood when he was out of jail, whether his family voted or if there's any kind of involvement with local government, and this is what he said.
Now, to be truthful, you know, my family, my father was a big time drug dealer in the city, and as far as political, any type of consciousness about my history, blackness, and none of that stuff was talked about. Voting was definitely not talked about that I ever heard of in my family, and not even the circles that I ran in, because everything was about the street life and my upbringing.
So how does that compare to your childhood, what you heard Harold say?
It's pretty much the same. When you're thinking about people who come from predominantly poor communities or communities where the only time politicians really come around is when it's time to vote. And so that process is like, for us, has always been distracting. So although my mother voted, a lot of people in my community didn't vote. They didn't believe that their voices mattered. They didn't believe that their votes counted. And a lot of times they didn't just even have the bandwidth mentally to even think about voting, because like I'm worrying about how I'm gonna eat tomorrow, how I'm gonna pay my next bill, how I'm gonna get some pampers for my child, all those type of things that a lot of times government was unable to, or seemed unable to help them with or fix. And so in a lot of ways, this gave me a certain type of apathy towards the system. And then I later on, like her was talking about, got into the streets and street life and things of that nature. And then that moves you farther away from working in with, you know, the system and wanting to vote, because now they are the adversary, they're the ops and all those type of things. And so I concur, or I really understand with what Harold is saying. But today, you know, like just through doing his work, and that's what's amazing about Harold and him being able to get out of ADX and like really get up to jail. Because I know he's experiencing the same things that I experienced. You come up there, you don't really believe in the system. You still are indoctrinated deeply in prison culture and penitentiary culture. And then you get up to jail and you start seeing that you have a voice, that you are human, that people care about you and will listen to you when you know how to advocate for yourself or articulate yourself. And so that leads you down a path of really understanding the power that you have and trying to share that with others. And I commend Harold for doing that. And I'm going to continue to do the same thing out here in society that I was doing while I was in prison.
Yeah, so mentioned that DC is special in another way in that it passed the Restore the Vote Act in 2020, which made it the third state/city behind Maine and Vermont that allows people who are incarcerated to vote. So Harold ended up in the jail after that, and I asked him then about his evolution to caring about it and being more engaged.
Well, I'm a little bit more conscious now than I was then, many, many years ago. So when I heard it, I thought, that's a good thing. So right after that, I was able to come up here and I was able to vote, and I voted. And then it felt good now that I was in a position that I can really bring attention to that. So what I did was, when that came up and we was allowed to vote as soon as we got here, and I got on the debate team, my very first debate team, and our issue on the debate team was about the right to vote. So I was able to initiate that, and I felt real good about that because I know the importance of voting. So we had a debate about being allowed to vote and those who not being allowed to vote. And our position was everybody should be allowed to vote, and we debated Georgetown University on that issue.
So we just heard that Harold has come around and is really engaged now. But I know from you going into the jail recently to help register them, talking to all the guys in prison, that there's still a lot of people that have to come along.
It's a lot of work, and so we just did. One of the things that More Than Crime does is we went to all the candidate forums, we took notes, and then to educate the guys that's incarcerated, we wanted to make sure that they're informed voters, especially when we're talking about ranked choice voting, where you can't rank a candidate if you don't know their agenda or their platforms and things that they run on. So we sent that into all the guys in the federal system. But I also go into DC jail bi-weekly with the League of Women Voters and try to help them get the guys inside registered to vote. And that's kind of like been an uphill battle. You walk into the unit, it's hot, and the officer announces, well, we had these people here and they trying to get y'all registered to vote. And immediately, everybody walk away from you. It's like, well, man, nobody don't care nothing about no voting. What is we talking about? Our voices don't count. Why should I vote? Well, I like Trump. Well, can I vote for Trump? That's like usually the conversation. Through my experience of just being in these spaces and being able to go to talk to them, although it's an uphill battle, I'm able to get some of them to understand that, okay, well, we talking about a bill like the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act that I came home on. And I just break it down to them so yes, I want you to vote, but what's more important than that is being civically engaged all the time. And what that looks like is you need to be civically engaged all the time because nobody knows what you need more than you know. And so for us, it was like a person like Crystal Carpenter who learned about the law that just passed in the Supreme Court that said that juveniles shouldn't be held as culpable as adults, right? In Alabama versus Miller. And then she took this legislation to the Campaign for Fair Sentencing Youth, and they started advocating and rubbing shoulders. And before you know it, it's a whole bill that's built around this type of science about the brain science of juveniles being different from adults and not fully maturing until you're 25 years old. And then you come up with a bill like the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act, which is spread all over the country, but it started from people talking about the things that they needed. It came from the public, it came from the constituents. It didn't come from a legislator making this law on his own. And so once I explain this to people while they're in prison and tell them that if it wasn't for a law like this, I wouldn't be home, then it starts to click and they understand more okay, all right, now I see why we should vote. Or not if I don't want to vote, but I understand why I should be civically engaged. And that's kind of like that uphill battle that we continue to fight against. I've written, we're sending our book in right now to everybody in the federal system as a motivational tool to get them to write. I've written letters to them and just trying, the work never stops, but I feel as though it's important. I know it's important and it has to be done. And so, you would hear the same thing from Harold that he's wrestling with over the jail with being on boots on the ground right there with him. But at the same time, you got to keep on pushing. And I believe that I know that through our lived experience or that peer support or that peer information that this constituency or these guys are more apt to start being civically engaged and vote.
And part of the challenge is, Rob, you touched on like IRA, the bill that, allowed you to be free and a lot of other guys to be free. And that's what everybody cares about is, will they do something to get me out of prison? But what they're not thinking about is
how these bills affect their mothers, how the laws affect their parents, their children, their home lives. Like, you love your mother, you care about your mother, you care about your children. Well, the things that they voting on, these politicians, is going to impact their lives.
But it's not just that. Once they get out, once they're released, then they find out how hard housing is, for instance, how hard it is to get a job. So they need to care, and those are broader issues that the council is debating all the time. And they don't always think ahead to think, oh, there's a lot of other issues I need to care about. So Harold talks also about his struggles to get people to care.
Listen, we dealing with something new. The only thing that I can say, if you want to interest the people that's in, they got to be hearing from people like me. They got to be hearing from people like Rob. They got to be hearing from people like Tone. They got to be hearing from the men that came home that's doing things in our city. If you don't get the brothers as well as the sisters in the federal system or even the state to be interested in voting and voting for a candidate, we would have to get the literature in specifically. I mean, it ain't got specifically, highlight one candidate, but we got to at least be talking about showing them that these candidates are for prison reform or some type. They suffering right now. They want to hear something that this can be beneficial, helpful for them to give up that vote. That's the only way I see it. If I was in that position, I'd be like, shoot, what type of candidate is they for keeping a second look at moving forward and in a more better situation? Are they for abolishing mandatory minimum? Is they for abolishing life without parole? Them candidates gonna have to be speaking to them the same way they speak to their constituents and out there about changing anything from fixing the streets or whatever like that.
One of the things I was talking to Harold about too is something that you talk a lot about, is that one of the messages, one of the things that got him to care, one of the things he tells other people is that people need to, the men and the women need to remember this is their city too. All this gentrification around, the city's changing rapidly, and yet it was Black Americans who really built DC, and he talks about that.
I would say we living in a time right now that's very important, and our city is going through a change right now, transformation, gentrification, and everything. This is our city. The same way we represent where we from in the feds and everywhere we at, our city, DC. They trying to take our city, but however, casting their vote is something that might or can be the tool used to keep our city as our city. But we're going to have to vote, and we're going to have to get the right people in there for us to see us and hear us. And our vote do matter. And I just want to say this one other thing so they can understand that a lot of brothers who came home like myself and like Rob, Tone, and everybody else, we got some men out there, man. Y'all know how we carried it when we was in. We sincere about this, and we wouldn't be behind anything like this if it wasn't beneficial for all of us. So that's what I say.
So the other challenge, though, is to get, one challenge is to get the people in prison to care about voting. The other challenge is to get the candidates to care. Because, we get tons of information out here. We can go to forums, there's articles in the media, as fundraisers, etc. But again, the prisoners are forgotten. And you know, giving them the vote was one thing, but showing them that they matter is another thing. So I also asked Harold, what would he say to candidates about why they should be finding creative ways, working with More Than Our Crimes, to get information about them, inside. And this is what Harold has to say.
They need to pay attention to us, because we're going to be coming back home if it be the will of God. And people like us, like the brothers that's already coming home and seeing what we doing, leadership role. We was leaders in prison, we're going to be leaders out of prison. Our name, the same way we carried ourselves in prison, we're going to carry ourselves out the street. And if y'all want our neighborhoods, and if y'all want to vote in here as well as out there, y'all going to have to deal with us. Y'all see a lot of us coming home doing some good things, and y'all are dealing with us. I see it. But I don't want y'all to be dealing with us just because we home. Send a message what y'all going to be doing for us while we in here to prepare us for when we coming home.
And so this is why we're in the process of trying to start a 501c4. Right now we are 501c3, and with that you basically have to be nonpartisan. You can't lobby for certain candidates. You can't advocate for certain candidates. You can't do none of that because you have to be nonpartisan. But if you're a 501c4, you can do exactly that. And so, similar to what Harold was saying, we here and we want to be seen, and we want our voices heard, and we want our issues on the agenda. And so the only way we do that is we come together as a strong voting bloc that has their own issues. So what I would like to do in the future is like have forums where the candidates come in, but it's a forum for people that's returned citizens and those that's still incarcerated. And or the candidates will hear their issues. So that way we can bring about, like with the jobs for returning citizens, housing for returning citizens, things like why guys are being sent all over the country from DC and the need for a prison in DC. So all these type of things that's not really being addressed, or is not being, they be in laws and stuff like that, and they talk about it, but it's not prioritized and it's not talked about openly in those ways.
Well, and also, you know, I talked to Robert White once, who sponsored the Restore the Vote Act, and he said, you know, if we could go to a candidate and say we can deliver like 5,000 votes, and actually if we could coalesce returned citizens doing a much larger block, then you can have power. Then you can say, you know, then you can actually negotiate and get candidates to commit to something when they know you can deliver votes.
And that's what we aim to do.
And actually the men and women in prison have been telling me, can you just tell us who will deliver for us? So one thing you said.
But we are unable to do that because we're 501(c)(3).
Yeah. And
so we just tell them that you got to we gave you the information.
Make up your own minds.
Make up your own mind.
But one thing you said also earlier, Rob, that was really important, is that power is built by not just voting. It's built by being involved and at the table all the time. So I asked Harold what his priorities are as ANC commissioner, not just to get out the vote, but what are the issues he wants to advance and push for with the council on behalf of the population in jail. And this is what he says.
Well, I'm definitely pushing for them to get off of this solitary confinement mindset that I see is moving around here. Because I can see it, because I've been through it, and there's no justification for it. And we know what solitary confinement do. It diminishes your mind mentally and physically. You start deteriorating and make you more worse than you were. So I know the importance of that. So that's one of the things that I'm advocating for, is making sure everybody out. They scared that it's going to be more violent. There's no way the violence is like the violence we came up. But if you give them something to do, I do believe they won't have to worry about it. But they got to listen to people like us that been through it.
The other thing that Harold says is he wants to be a role model for others. I think the challenges that we've been talking about, like how do you get people to vote, how do you get people to care, how do you get people to engage, it is by being an example. Yeah. You know, so when Rob, now they know about Rob, everyone in prison knows about Rob. And when he writes now and sends messages in, you know, they see him, oh wow, look at what Rob's doing out around,
yeah,
right?
I mean, that's this period in life. Sometimes, especially when you're talking about peers, you need it. Even like you think about a child that's in the hood, They need to see somebody doing something positive to see that they can aspire to do the same thing. And so because a lot of times we don't see us doing this type of work or in these type of positions, then you don't feel as though like you can do those type of things. But seeing somebody like Harold as the ANC, seeing myself going down Congress and James and Pete and all these guys doing this type of work out here in the community, boots on grounds, going straight to the city council, talking to your council members, and really working hand in hand with them a lot of times to sway certain legislation that affects our community. The guys appreciate that and they see that. You know what I mean? Like even when they were talking about taking the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act away and how we coalesced around the issue and went down there and kind of like saved it. They see that and they okay, yeah, well now I'm seeing the importance of being civic engaged and what that looks like.
And not only that, so not only does it show them that, oh, I can make a difference, but it's also like, wow, he's fighting so hard for me.
Yeah.
I need to step up.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
right?
I would hope that.
Yeah, so
I would hope that.
So let's listen to Harold.
So my position is to get the word out to the men as well as the women that we are somebody. Carry yourself like you somebody. Move like that. Get that DC swag back, but do it in a more positive, constructive way instead of a destructive way. So my voice, I put out stuff on the tablet when I can. I know they don't like me speaking here, but I do have people who in a high position that respect me because I'm not going to bend or bow because I really love these brothers as well as these sisters, and I'm sincere about it. So my position and my priority is to be a man of my word and let them know that I'm fighting for them.
So we just heard, Harold say he wants everybody to know that is still, left behind, so to speak, while he's able to be here in DC at least, that he's fighting for them, that he's fighting for them. And that was your goal.
It's always going to be my goal because I have a lot of men and women who are still in prison who are wrestling with life sentences, who could be doing amazing things out here in society. I know their intellect. I know who they are as people. I've spent a lot of time with them. And so like for me, it's like you left a brother or a sister behind. And so I'm carrying them on my back. I'm always fighting for them. And I always want to do anything and everything I can to make sure that their situation is best as possible. I don't want to say comfortable, but also if and when they come home that they have access to the things that they need. And it feels amazing to be able to do this. And I know Harold feels the same way. It's like, wow, like that you can do these type of things.
And to all of a sudden be heard.
And all of a sudden to be
After
heard.
being silent for so long.
Yeah, I mean, like it don't give me a high anymore. It used to, but now it's like it's just part of the work. But it's
for him,
it's
it's still
fulfilling
fresh.
work.
For him, it's still
No,
fresh.
it's still
yeah.
fresh for him because he's still incarcerated. So
Yeah.
his fight is for them, but it's also for myself.
Yeah.
You know, like because I'm trying to change conditions for myself.
Yeah.
And so like he would tell you about that, what that feels like more better than anybody.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing like having your voice heard. I've been in a system like the feds and everywhere else, especially in solitary confinement. When you can't have your voice heard, when no one can hear what you're going through, when you seeking help, that's what the high rate of suicide I'm talking about in the places that I was at. When people feeling though that they can't have their voice heard, it's like it's non-existence. When your voice is muffled and silenced, it's no different than out in the street. If black people can't hear that their issues being answered, it leads to anger, frustration, and that's out there. So just imagine in here, the anger, the frustration, the mental torment that your brain is going through by not having your voice heard.
Well, so I hope that, for me, what I hope everybody who hears this episode who perhaps has not been incarcerated before, is we take so much of this for granted. We take voting for granted and we don't do it. Or we don't get civically engaged. Listen, most of the people I know, they don't go to council hearings. They don't file the bills. They don't testify. They don't speak up.
They just vote, and half the time they don't know what they
So,
vote for. Who
so
they
we
vote
could
for.
we can learn something from this population. You know, as they realize the power that they have and work so hard to get involved, we all could be inspired and take a lesson from them. So this is our episode today. We hope that you will subscribe. We hope you share this episode with others and tune in and watch us the next time.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.